All right, guys, today we're going to be doing transformations and identifying transformations. So let's look at our first example. I have triangle ABC, and then I have triangle A prime, A double prime, B double prime, and C double prime. I want to figure out the transformations that will get me from this triangle to this one to this one. First, let's figure out how do I get from the original to A double prime, to A prime, B prime, C prime. Well, let's see what I know. These triangles are the same shape. They're also the same size, which means that they cannot have been dilated. They also can't have been translated because I see that triangle ABC, A is pointing up. In our second triangle, A is pointing down. So that means it can't have been translated because translated means I just move it around the graph. I don't change the way it's facing. So that leaves me with reflection and rotation. Well, I see that this is over two different axes, so it can't have been reflected. So that leaves me with rotation. And I see that since it's skipped two different quadrants, it's got to be 180-degree rotation. Now, how do I get from A prime, B prime, C prime to A double prime, B double prime, C double prime? Well, I see that it's over one axis, and A prime now faces up for A double prime. That means that this has been reflected over the x-axis. So those are our two transformations that will get us to A double prime, B double prime, C double prime. I also see that this triangle, that A double prime, B double prime, C double prime is a direct reflection of A prime, B prime, C prime. It's just as if I flipped it. All right, let's go into another example. All right, guys, our next example is going to be a review of rotations. I got Keshara and Sydney who are going to tell you what they know about rotations.
Rotations produce congruent figures.
Oh, I messed that up.
Rotations produce congruent figures. Rotations do not resize figures, but they do change the orientation.
In other words, they change the way the shape is facing.
That's great, guys.
First figure, we're going to rotate it 180 degrees clockwise. 180 degrees tells me I'm going to be doing 2 turns, and clockwise tells me I'm going to be turning my paper to the right. Now, my very first step is to turn the graph the number of turns. Well, we just said it was going to be 2 turns and that it was going to be to the right. So I'm going to take my paper and turn it 2 times to the right. 1, 2. My next step is that I'm going to relabel my graph. So this is my y-axis, this is my x-axis. This doesn't have to be beautiful, but you do have to be able to see all of your points. So this becomes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And you see how I'm just relabeling my graph. That's all I'm doing. Nothing super crazy. Okay, and then -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, 6. My next step is to write down the coordinates of my triangle A, B, and C from my new graph that I just did with my turns. So C is now at -1 and -2. B is at 3, -2. And A is at 3, -7. Now that I have these coordinates written, I'm going to turn my paper back to normal. And I'm also going to rewrite my coordinates here so we can see them a little bit easier. 3, -7, 3, 2, 1, -2. Okay, now my next step is simply to plot these coordinates on my original graph. So now I'm going to ignore all the numbers in red, and I'm going to plot the points on the original graph. So A was at 3, -7. So I'm going to go to 3 on my x value, and I'm going to go down to 7. And I'm going to label that A prime. Be very sure that you are labeling as you go, or you're going to get confused. B was at 3, -2. So I'm going to go to 3, I'm going to go down to -2. That becomes B prime. C is at -1 negative 2. So I'm going to go to negative 1 on my x value and negative 2 on my y value, and that becomes c prime. My last step here is just to draw my lines. And that's it. That's 180 degrees clockwise. Let's do another example.